If you want to go out and catch 20, 30, or 40 fish in a fishing trip, the pattern I'm going to show in this video is the one for you. By using an easy Google Earth trick, you can find shallow, sweet spots that hold a ton of fish and they can be caught with one of my favorite baits in the whole world, a Squarebill crankbait. Let's get into it. Today we're on Hudson Lake in Oklahoma. It's the middle of September and bass are transitioning from their summer to their fall patterns. Lake Hudson is unique because it sets up like a highland reservoir on the lower end with 3 to 4 feet of water visibility, but a lowland reservoir on the upper end with a foot to 6 inches of visibility. This gave me a lot of options when I got to the lake, but I decided to start on a shallow, hard spot that was in the mouth of a pocket.
Got him. Good one. Oh man. Here, stay on their fish. This guy up here. Graphed a little hard spot that I marked on Google Earth, and there was some shad up here, a few fish, and this guy was down there. Oh, there we go. That is a nice one right there on the little Spro Baby John Squarebill crankbait. Man, there's a bunch of fish up here, guys. Beautiful fish. It's got that guy cranking a little hard spot. There's a bunch of bait right now. Water temperatures are about 75 degrees. Shad are pushing in the back of some of these little pockets. And I'm just finding some of these little wind-blowing hard spots. And that is a nice fish for the first one of the day. Let's get a weight on him. Solid fish right there, 2 pounds, 11 ounces. Good way to start the day out here on good old Lake Hudson. Let's get this guy back down there. That's what I'm talking about. There we go, guys. I got to kind of reposition the boat with the wind here, but got that fish on this little Spro Fat John 60 Squarebill, and I'm cranking a spot up here that's no more than 2 to 3 feet deep on top, and you can actually see on Google Earth what I'm actually fishing. It's a little hard spot, and this is a very subtle little deal, but when these fish start transitioning in the fall from their summer patterns to these fall patterns, a great place to look are these little short points in the mouth of pockets with these hard spots. And if you can have some current rolling across them or some wind, these fish will stack up and just chase bait. And a lot of times you can catch multiple fish off these areas, but sometimes it's just a one fish here, one fish there type of deal. But I have a pile of them marked, so we're just going to run a lot of these today and not really worry too much about what we're seeing on the live scope or anything. This is basically a live scope free pattern for everyone who doesn't want to use live scope. This is a great way to catch them because it's super shallow and I'm just burning the crankbait old school style. And this is what I mean by a hard spot, guys. Basically got a little shell bed, little mussel shell right here that's washed up on top of that little bar, that shallow point, and that's what these fish are setting up on. And these fish will get pretty shallow this time of year. Even though water temperatures are still 75 degrees, they'll be up there in a foot or two of water, even on these bright bluebird sky days. You just need to have that wind and that current to kind of get these fish positioned up on top of these deals, and you can catch some good ones.
Let me show you how I found this subtle offshore hard spot using Google Earth. If you download Google Earth Pro on a desktop computer, you can actually find old historical images of lakes all across the country. Depending on which lake you're on, you may be able to find an image when the lake is drawn down below normal pool. This will expose key structure spots that aren't visible when the lake is at full pool. On this specific spot, there was an image when the lake was 3 to 4 feet low. You can clearly see a nice underwater point that extends out in the mouth of this pocket. Usually when you have a high spot like this that's surrounded by deeper water on all sides, you're going to have harder bottom in that area just because that area wasn't eroded away by the waves and the wind. After identifying this hard spot, I dropped a pin in Google Earth and was able to transfer that pin to my fish finder. I made a video explaining how to do this. It's a relatively complex process, so I would highly recommend checking out the video that I've linked here and also down in the description below. I didn't get any more bites on the shallow hard spot, but I had marked about 50 different interesting areas on Google Earth, and I decided to start hitting as many as I could until I ran into another fish. After fishing about a dozen areas I'd marked on Google Earth, I finally rolled up to a point that was loaded with baitfish and fish.
Got him. There we go. Stay hooked up, fish. Right on the dot, right on my waypoint. There we go, 2 pounds, 3 ounces. Another solid fish right there. Not giants, but I mean, fishing in September is really tough. And if you can catch fish, I mean, they're busting right here. It is happening on this spot. Let me get this guy back down in the water, get back after these fish. Woo! Here we go, guys. Got that fish on the Spro Fat John 60 here, and I'm just fishing a little ditch that I marked in the mouth of this pocket. It's a perfect staging area for these early fall bass. And my favorite part about this type of fishing is that you don't need the live scope, and it's kind of actually hard to use the live scope on this type of deal. You can side image these spots decently, I guess, but really you can rely mainly on Google Earth to find a lot of this stuff. And it's so shallow that you're not going to have an advantage if you have live scope or not, but it's still an offshore spot. So you're offshore fishing without live scope, and it's just something that a lot of guys aren't doing because they don't have confidence in these areas just for the fact that they can't see anything on their live scope. And this is how I grew up fishing, especially on like Lake Dardanelle and shallower, dirtier lakes. And whenever I can get this pattern rolling, it is my #1 favorite way to catch them. Just a crankbait or a jig and 2 to 5 feet of water offshore. And it's not super easy. I'm having to cover a ton of water to get this pattern to work, but when I catch one, it's a pretty good one. Got him. Another good one. Stay on their fish. Oh gosh. There we go, guys. 3 pounds even on that fish. Nice one. This is a chunk right there. It's not that long of a fish. It's just thick and healthy. These fish are feeding up on the shad that are in this area. You can see them kicking around on the surface, and there's all kinds of bait around. So you know these fish have the forage they need, but definitely finding those little irregularities just off the bank make it a lot easier to catch them because there's so many anglers beating the bank right now. Here we go, guys. Get this beautiful fish back down in the lake. Now, I'm not doing anything super special with this crankbait when I'm actually retrieving it, other than trying to keep it moving pretty quick. Because I'm fishing in such shallow water, this crankbait will kind of pop out of the water every once in a while because it just hits such a shallow patch. But I will sometimes just twitch my rod or just pause that bait every once in a while to give it a little bit more of an erratic action if I'm not making a bunch of bottom contact. Most of the time I am though, so you can get away mainly with just a straight retrieve. But it definitely does help to bring that bait in pretty quick. You're trying to generate reaction strikes, and if you're not feeling that bottom, pause that bait for half a second or just twitch your rod, and that will get those fish to bite a lot of times when they're just following it.
To illustrate how much water I had to cover to make this pattern work, I actually drew out the path I took on this fishing day in Google Earth and measured the distance that I traveled. Overall, I covered 27 miles during a 6-hour fishing trip and fished over 30 spots that I marked on Google Earth. While I've only included the quality fish up to this point in the video, I did catch a lot of smaller fish off of these waypoints, and on average I was getting bit on 1 out of every 5 spots that I would pull up and fish. Not every spot held quality fish, and some spots were holding white bass and drum and other species, but I was getting consistent action by running these isolated waypoints fishing them for 5 to 10 minutes apiece, and then moving on quickly, covering as much water as possible in the limited time I had to fish.
Well guys, I'm back here at the boat ramp and I had a blast today catching them on the Squarebill crankbait. I ended up catching about 40 fish today, maybe 15 bass, 20 white bass, and then 4 or 5 drum. And that's a really good day of fishing for me in September, even though we only managed to land 3 quality bass, like 2+ pounders. I did actually break off one really good fish in a brush pile that sawed me off. I don't know how big it was. It could have been anywhere from like 2.5, maybe up to 5 pounds. I also jumped off another fish on a crankbait off of a laydown that felt like it was another 3 to 4 pounder, and I saw the side of it a little bit. Couldn't get a sense for how big it was, but I definitely had a chance at a really good bag today if I had the luck go my way, but can't complain when I'm catching 40 fish out here in September. As far as what I was fishing today, I actually threw 2 different Squarebills. The one I caught all my bass on that I showed in the video was this sexy shad colored Spro Fat John 60. The great thing about this crankbait here is that it has this circuit board bill on it, and you can basically grind this thing in the rocks all day long and that bill will not break. This crankbait also does really well grinding in 2 to 3 feet of water, which I was doing a lot today, even though this bait does run about 6 feet deep on a long cast. I did switch over to a different crankbait just to try something a little bit different in the afternoon when we got a lot of sun, and that was this Fat John 50. So it's a little bit smaller bait with a little bit different shaped lip. It still has that circuit board material and it grinds through the rocks really, really well. And the main thing with these 2 baits is that they're shad imitators and they're designed to be fished in that really shallow, skinny water. There are some Squarebills out there that don't work great when you're fishing them up in like a foot of water around rocks, but these 2 definitely perform. I'm throwing both of these crankbaits on a 7-foot medium power moderate action crankbait rod in the Denali Lithium Pro series, and I'm pairing that with a $30 Abu Garcia Black Max. It's like 5 years old that I bought at Walmart, and some 12-pound Sunline FC Sniper fluorocarbon. I throw 12-pound fluorocarbon with these crankbaits because I want to be able to maximize their depth if I need to when I'm out here, and I don't have any problem breaking off even around those rocks with this 12-pound fluorocarbon, as long as I'm using this nice moderate rod that has a lot of give to it, which helps with those treble hooks, but it also helps with not breaking off this crankbait. I will say you do want to retie quite often though. I'm usually retying after every fish catch or every other fish catch, and that's just to help make sure that you don't have any nicks in your line from grinding that crankbait down there super deep. This is a great technique, guys. As these fish start transitioning from their summer patterns into the creeks, it's still pretty warm outside. I mean, this morning it was like 60 degrees, now it's like 85. So water temperatures haven't really dropped that much. They're kind of hovering between 75 and 80 degrees. But these bass are on the move up shallow. There's a lot of them up there. And if you can find those areas on Google Earth, mark them and transfer them to your unit, you can catch a ton of fish cranking this time of year. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. We'll see you on the next one.